All right, we're doing this thing called podcasting across the computer screen. With me today, I have a man who's been in the news pretty recently for one of his projects that evolves around helping people find toilet paper and paper towels and sanitary items. But this isn't his only business as well, and he has a handful, and he's very into the tech scene and app building, and I'm excited to talk to him. So I want to welcome Nick Bembenek.
What's happening? How's everyone?
Dude, thank you for coming. Yeah, thank you for coming on, man. You're the first tech coder that's been on the show, so I'm excited to learn some. Yeah.
I do want to clarify that I technically do not program. I'm a UI design developer, but like not in the sense of I don't actually program. I am purely on the marketing, design, and the like brand identity behind projects. I have partners that are technical leads. Okay. But I do have a day-to-day with programming and with technology in general.
Okay, yeah. So you're like the Steve Jobs of your company.
Let's hope it continues in that direction. But I don't rule with an iron fist like he does, though. We're pretty calm around here.
That's exciting. So I've known you for a little while, and I tried to go down the tech app field once in a while, but I broke the golden rule, and we didn't have any builders on our team, and so that ultimately ended up failing. And you've had some success. I mean, you've also had some failures. So let's build some context. And first, let's describe who Nick Bembenek is and your relationship to Vegas.
I'm a designer from Las Vegas. I've designed basically everything from a T-shirt to a to a very large technology product and everything in between. So it's been about a 10-year journey to where I'm at right now, and Vegas has been home for the entire process.
Yeah, Vegas is it's a very interesting city when it comes to tech because there's no like dominant company out here, and so it seems like it's a bunch of like freelancers running around the city.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think besides Zappos has like a nice little hold on their market. Yeah, there's not a ton of technology companies or studios really. We kind of, as Deep Space Program, which is our main hub of a studio, we are one of very few in Las Vegas that actually build out software projects and do the whole shebang turnkey business.
Okay, and what's the idea behind Deep Space Program? First, let's start with the name.
Okay, so basically we started a app called Superlister maybe 3 years ago, where it was just creating lists of, and anybody could add to the list and people would vote on it, and so it would create like the best of. So it could be like the best type of apple, or it could be not Apple product, like, or it could be an Apple product as well, but like, yeah, Fiji, or it could be something, like best bagel in Las Vegas. So you could do location specific, you could do basically anything, start creating lists and ranking things. So when we were starting that, we were about 6 months in, it was getting some really good traction, but like a lot of tech companies, they have like these false positives where it's like, oh yeah, everything's great, and then right, and our user base stopped growing as much. And during that whole process, when it was, when everything is good, we were like, yeah, if we blow up, we'll pull an Elon Musk. We're like, we'll start a space program. And at the end of it, we're like, you know what, the project failed, but we're pretty good at creating these products together, and we have people that are asking us to do it. Let's start a space program. And I basically went on GoDaddy and I was like, if Deep Space Program is available, I'm buying it. That's our name, and we're moving forward. And it was, so it was that simple, and everything else kind of, it fit. We're like all very much utilitarian. So like if it serves a purpose, then we love it. And space kind of is the most utilitarian you could be. Like nothing, there is no like frills and thrills. It's just like keep me alive. And that's kind of the type of design that I personally love is stuff it's well designed for use in real life. It doesn't just look good, it feels good, it acts good, everything about it serves a purpose.
Yeah, and space is what's in right now. Everyone's focused on space. We just had
happy
that
accident. happy accident. It was definitely, SpaceX, shout out to Elon. the launch was that it's huge. Everything we kind of, which is funny, we didn't consider this, but SEO has been an absolute nightmare of trying to find deep space program, because every time Elon tweets something and writes an article, it is not our friend. We've TP Finder actually helped though, because we had so much traffic through that, and our DSPs, is credited all over the website in little areas, so it ended up boosting us up. So it went in order. I think it was NASA, Jet Propulsion Lab, JPL, and then us for a while, like deep space right under it. And I was like, this is too good to be true. It lasted exactly 2 months. We're now number 8 again.
I hope you screenshotted that and you just put that as your profile picture.
I didn't, but I should have. I should have been like, yeah, this is, hopefully we stay. If I'm okay to be number 3 to 2, multi-billion-dollar government organizations, I think that's totally acceptable.
Yeah, completely acceptable. And I do like the name deep space, because space is so vast and there's so many different planets and galaxies and things that we haven't figured out, that it pretty much encompasses your business, that you can pretty much build out anything under the sun, or I guess it'd be under universe.
Universe, yeah. It's definitely, it kind of fit everything. It's a little mysterious, a little like future facing, a little bit of like curiosity. It definitely, whenever I'm wearing any of our hats or t-shirts, like, and it says Deep Space Program, I get a lot of people that are like, they either think it's an actual clothing line and they're like, oh, that's cool, or they're like, is there actually a deep space program? Like, where'd you, like, can I find it? And I'm like, no, it's just a design studio. It's just.
And so with Deep Space Program, how many people are a part of your team, and are you a founder or co-founder?
Co-founder. So there's 2 full-time. Me and my co-founder are the 2 full-time right now, and then we have about 5 consultants, and then another handful of designers and engineers that come in depending on the project. So if we need somebody to do an illustration and it's specifically in this style, we'll find somebody who's that is their thing. And the same thing programming, where it's like, if we need something structurally done, we'll try to find the person to make it the best that we can. So it's kind of it didn't make sense at the time, because we've been working on DSP full time for about 2.5, 3 years, and up until really this year, it didn't really make sense to hire someone full time to be with us. But we do have consultants that are basically with us daily.
It's smart. It's one thing that I've learned with tech is that it's so deep and it's so vast, and there's so many small nuanced positions within the space, that it's really hard to find one person to do one thing, and you kind of have to brain pool all the ideas and the projects within itself.
Yeah, I think kind of like how we've done a lot of them is we have a technical and then a design lead. And so I always take the design lead. So I'll handle like the marketing, the branding, the build out of basically what people see, how they interact with the product. And then technical lead, make sure that we're getting everything in place, and just kind of piecing people together for the tasks that they should have. And I do the same on the design side. So we kind of are able to create pretty large projects that are at an affordable rate, and a really just an overall complete solid project that would take teams of 6 we can do with a smaller team, and do it in this like new fashion of being able to pull people from different parts of the world.
That's smart. One thing I've learned is that tech is really expensive, and affordability is something that a lot of people look in first. And before we go into your clients, I'm interested, what inspired you to go into the design, and I guess it'd be more design and marketing, and then eventually into tech? Was there some sort of influence when you were younger, inspiration?
So I kind of always liked fashion. It was my first love of design, and it was from a young age. It was something I was very interested in. I remember being in middle school and thinking to myself I was going to start a clothing line, and everyone was like, that's a terrible idea, don't do that. Like nobody said that was a good idea. And then in high school it's like, I should start a clothing line. And then in college I've said the same thing, and my friend was like, you should. And I was like, oh, whoa, this is the first time in my life that somebody has actually agreed with me on this. So I was like, yeah, like let's go in, let's do it. So I bought like a bunch of blanks, and I couldn't afford a graphic designer. So I basically like pirated like everything I could at like maybe 18. And I taught myself Illustrator, Photoshop, like kind of just the works of the Adobe suite. Sorry, Adobe. And then I now pay a good amount monthly for the last 6 or 7 years, but the first two, those were the
Hey, we were all LimeWire pirates for a little while when we were younger.
Exactly. LimeWire, basically Napster. That was the first, the first thing where I was like, whoa, you can take things from the internet. And then that snowballed until I basically I was like, okay, ethically, I should probably stop stealing things on the internet. So basically I kind of started from there. I taught myself the design, I guess, softwares, the core of them in Adobe Suite. And so I created my first clothing line. It went well, and I ended up creating and sold out of all the products. And I was like, well, I want to try something else. So I was like, maybe I'll get into cut and sew and like actually work with manufacturers. So I partnered with somebody and we ended up doing that. And that was around for 2 years. But during that process, I had a bunch of friends I was like meeting in fashion, and they were like, oh, like you create logos, or can you create this? And so I started to like slowly do a lot more design work. And after the second company, we sold all of our products and we decided to kind of part ways at the end of it. The one thing that was consistent was I was getting asked pretty often to do design work, and I never really wanted to I had no interest in doing like graphic design where I would, put together posters or something like that. But branding was always like super interesting to me, creating that brand identity. And so for like 3 years after I got kind of pivoted out of fashion, it went into basically just doing branding for different companies, and like some small, some big, like just a good time of my life was just dedicated to learning like what makes a good brand. And then from there, I met my co-founder in Deep Space program, it's Andrew, and he was building an app at the time. And I was so curious about tech, but I had absolutely zero experience. And he's like, well, you've clearly designed a lot of, and I also did some websites and stuff. And he's like, have you ever done anything in app development? And I was like, no, I've never but I'm really interested. And I would actually read like software engineering books. Like I was trying to learn, just at the time it was Objective-C. And he was like, like if you want to team up, we can probably create something from this where you do design work and I'll handle the engineering. And that was my first introduction to UI, and that was about 5 years ago now. And from there, it's been a hodgepodge of all of that stuff combined. And recently, I've been able to have the privilege of working with some physical objects again, creating some packaging, and that's been really fun to get back into that space. It's hard to turn off the creative switches. So it's like once you start, I want to design everything, like everything in the world. Like it's not like I sketch regularly furniture and like just try, like it's a good mental practice to see, because the thing on your screen, like the thing about technology and that sort of design is it's so two-dimensional that yes, you can create like a lot of things that like have different shape, but it's different than the physical like three-dimensional space. So having the option to do both is so ideal. And it gives me back to like I believe in the principle of you design beautiful things when you're surrounded by them, and I kind of want to keep, and I continually just add little things into my life that I'm like, oh, if I can take one design principle from Dieter Rams, if I can take one and just kind of like from the Eames, and if I can just take all of these little things, maybe I'll be able to create amazing items by the time I'm, in my mid-30s in the physical space as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's going to be a bunch of like swapping back and forth in between the 3D and 2D, and maybe if Deep Space program goes into the 4D and hits space, and you can help design out there too.
Do we have some ideas and some 4D conceptual, like there's some interesting things that we have in the books. That's the beautiful thing about like doing both client and like our own work at the same time, is that we're able to meet with all these different people in different backgrounds, and they'll like say one thing, it's like, whoa, I've never thought about that, and now I can go write that down, write out a whole like kind of idea. if you went through my notes, there's just like business idea after business idea after business idea. And some of them I'll look back in a year and be like, wow, that is awful. I don't know why I thought that was a coherent thought. And then others are like, oh, this is kind of solid. Like, and one of them, which is more in augmented reality, I've been playing around with for about 2 years, and it's still on the boards, but we'll see if we ever get to it.
That's the next wave that I've always tell people about is AR and VR. But you see, AR is making more of a splash, especially in those some of those like cell phone designs where they have the like AR that stems out from the cell phone and some other different technological advances.
I think the interesting thing about augmented reality versus virtual reality is that augmented reality, you actually are like, it has physical application today. Virtual reality, until like there's so many things to consider, and the reality is like you aren't interacting with it daily, like in your real life space. The ability to be able to have a poster come alive from a marketing perspective is interesting, especially once you have like I know Apple has glasses that have been leaked a million times of what like they may come out, they may not come out. Google's had them in the past, but the idea of being able to take like physical things and bring them to life is a interesting I personally, I know VR is much more popular. It seems like right now with people developing it. I've never really, but I'm not like a video game person per se. I'm not like into any of like that. It kind of is like, I like real life. Like I like
you like designing the 3D objects. You want to be a part of it.
Yeah, I was like, don't take me out of that by making everything virtual. There's I guess I can just do renderings of things. Super fun.
Yeah, I've been looking into VR more specifically just because the crypto space is doing it, and in VR, it's something that's trending is virtual reality, like podcasting and video conferencing, where they like there's like 100 people virtually in a room, and then they have a presenter, 2 people up front talking, and
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and they're either talking or someone's doing a presentation with like a PowerPoint, and then you can actually stay in the room for up to an hour after and talk to the people that were in the crowd. So that's like something that I've been looking at seriously.
That's pretty cool. And what about in crypto? Is that kind of around? Because I know you've been into crypto for years.
So it's just more of the presenters have been finding different ways to leverage new technologies into like the new fintech movement. So the more that you leverage on top of each other, the more people get intrigued because they're like, oh, what is this shiny object kind of idea?
You're like blockchain, crypto, VR, fintech, everything, everything in one. Yeah. No, okay. I feel that. I do think I think all of it's interesting, and everything is moving so quickly. It kind of feels quick and slow at the same time. Like we've talked about VR for 5 years actively, but like the next big thing is going to be, and like I've had weird thoughts on how everyone's like web 1.0, web 2.0, web 3.0, and everyone assumed that like 3.0 is going to be like kind of machine learning or like virtual reality, augmented reality, and all that. And I thought like I had like kind of a weird thought on that, where I was like, web 1.0 is like the internet. 2.0 is you're going to have like apps and mobile, and that like revolutionized kind of how people interact with technology. Web 3.0, everyone went to machine learning and augmented reality and all this. I may be speaking completely out of turn because I'm sure there's people with complete tech backgrounds that are like way more filled than mine. But I always thought it was interesting that people overlook that a 2-person or a 5-person or a 10-person team could create a company in months. And I was like, the amount of technology that's out now that you can leverage to create like these full projects, that seems like a 3.0 to me, because we're like VR, AR, all that is like kind of pressed. Machine learning is very much active right now, and that could also be part of it. But the ability to be able to create such complete project in short amount of times with like limited resources is like it's an option now. It's the first time ever that's been an option. Tech companies and like all these app companies in the late 2000s were basically, I mean, it did take thousands of man hours each division of a company to be able to create them. And then that's why they're worth a lot of money. But also that isn't necessary anymore, really. Like, it does take a long time to create apps and create projects, but it's nowhere near the same as it was 10 years ago, like fractions.
Mm-hmm. The space is moving very fast. And I think partly due to that is the emergence and popularism of open source technologies and crowdsourcing projects, because now you can get multiple eyes on it and people can come to a consensus and build on it. And that's kind of where I thought Web 3 is going to go, is more of like the decentralized open source, people can help each other kind of project.
That's
And
also true.
I know you're familiar with a crowdfunding project, correct?
Yeah, I mean, pretty familiar. Yeah, at this point, we've had our run in it. Yeah, it's with TP Finder specifically. I
Yeah, do you
think
want
that
to
was
expand on it? Yeah.
sure. Yeah, TP Finder was kind of so right as COVID began to like actually I guess, we had like shutdowns across the US, and states were having stay-at-home ordinance and all this. So we kind of were watching the news and social media and seeing how we could help. And the funniest thing was, it wasn't anything to do with like how we could help a community. Ended up being like the simplest thing, which is find toilet paper, because everyone had shortages, and it was like a joke, and it was like memeable. And that was kind of like the good part about it, was we were able to basically, we were only going to launch it in Las Vegas and just have it be like a local kind of thing. And one of our friends was like, no, you have to put it on Reddit. It's too funny. You have to put it on Reddit, like see what happens. And it was trending on Reddit for the full day, and it ended up getting 40,000 visitors like very first day. And so we were like, oh, well, I guess it's national. And then it like kind of snowballed from there. And I think we ended up like definitely north of 200 and something thousand users over the course of 2 months. And about a month in, we decided to expand from, not just toilet paper, but also into sanitary wipes, sprays, hand sanitizer, all that kind of that stuff, because we had, hundreds of emails asking us to, basically. And it was cool. It was an interesting process. We were fortunate enough to, for Google, it was an expense. So we decided from the beginning, we were going to put a set budget aside. And if we exceeded it, we would have to basically close the project, just not because we don't want to help, but because it was a substantial amount. And we're like, if it hits beyond this, then we have to find sources elsewhere to be able to fund. And luckily, we had a bunch of local, from communities around the US that donated, and that was really awesome because it kept it going. And then Google actually deemed us a crisis relief app and gave us a nice credit, so then that worked. And we were using Mapbox to actually do the mapping on there. And I hit them up, and they said the same thing. They were like, yeah, I'd love to help, and gave us the time for free. So we were able to take our expenses from several thousand, and basically, because of everyone's donations, make it where we broke even on the project, which is beautiful. That's great. It's great because it was hundreds of hours and a lot of marketing push. I probably sent out several thousand emails to different news stations. Luckily, I was able to kind of just write them all and they do a program that sent them. So else it would have been a nightmare to actually send them individually. But yeah, it was a cool experience. It was rewarding just to see. I mean, when people would be like, "Oh, wait, I think I saw you," and you're like, "Yeah, it's a cool like personal like experience," but also to be able to help like that many people was completely like not something I considered while we were doing it. Like, we built that entire project in less than 5 days. So yeah, it was kind of like we're sitting at home anyways, and I was like, we can either keep working on projects that we're ultimately going to push the launch on because we're not going to launch in the middle of this, or we can take some time, see what happens. And it ended up working, which is, I cannot say common for like in technology. It's just it's not common to see all that happen that quickly. So it was definitely cool. We actually are shutting down TP Finder. It's been shut down already. You can still go to the website, but we're not taking on any more basically. And just kind of chalking it up to, it was a good community move, and everyone seemed to, it was well received, except for like, I don't know, 100 people on Reddit, they tore us apart. But other than that,
there's always haters on Reddit though. There's always the
God,
downvoters.
there was people that either they were like so supportive, and I was like, that is the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, followed right up by like probably the worst thing you could say to a human being on the internet. And I was like, we got called spies. We got called a bunch of different things. I was
Probably
like,
Russians for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think Andrew may be like 25% Russian. Who knows, really?
Yeah. Well, first I want to congratulate you on that success, especially in 2 months. You guys put your minds together and found a community-led movement, and I'm sure it opened up more opportunities in the future as far as different routes that you could market and design structure. That was one of my questions was going to be, are you going to leverage that existing user base into a different project?
No, so the way we set up TP Finder was that we wanted everyone to feel like it was accessible, and we thought the best way was to not have logins then, and to not keep it where you feel like you have to put anything in to get something out of it, because we wanted everybody just to use it and to interact. So we didn't collect really, short of people that emailed us or put in a subscription to get more notifications on it, or actually donated. We don't have anyone's emails or anything like that. So it was kind of we had no intentions of really creating a monetization strategy from like our structure from it. Like I said, we planned on losing money and just kind of like putting it in and saying like, oh, it's for a good cause, like it's fine. And it ended up, being bigger than us, which is super, super rewarding and cool. But no, we aren't really leveraging the user base, but I will say that we have created like very good relationships locally with most of the news stations now. And, like everyone at Fox has been very supportive of us, and we ran, I think, like 3 or 4 stories on TP Finder. And because we're always pumping out new products, we've asked every one of them, all the media across the US, if they were interested in hearing about our new products, and all of them said yes. So that's always a good step up, because having those connections is something we haven't had in the past. And traditional, I have realized during this whole process, it being like a millennial and being like where I'm used to Facebook ads, Instagram ads, running like marketing campaigns like that. But traditional media, so we had some print, like in the Review Journal here locally, and then I think Index Journal in South Carolina. So some print media that was like did really well for us. Like you could tell that it was coming from, just because it was like around, the pop was around the same time it went live. And same thing with like some publications online. So like traditional media, it's strong. Like it has a presence, and it's so bizarre to see, because you think that like, oh no, like it's all about technology. Like that's my world, is like it's all about like all these tech companies and how they market, but you forget that like the level of responsibility they have to their user base, and like their user base truly respects what they put out in their media. So when you run something on a local news station, they trust that they've already vetted everyone that's getting through there. On Facebook, there is no real vetting. Like it's just like, oh, does it have too many words in the picture? Like that's as deep as it goes. So that was an interesting experience, and we'll definitely leverage that moving forward into more. And we were able to create some cool partnerships. If you're listening to this in Las Vegas or on the West Coast in general, Terrible Herps gas stations, we were able to create a really good relationship with them. And they ran an ad on every one of their gas pumps for the last 7 weeks, which has been super, super cool, because that's it's a recognized name here locally that we we got to actually do something with. So that was all cool. But actually using the leveraging the user base now, I don't think there's a way that we can do it effectively, and that's like honest to anything that we're creating. But it does give us a better rounded background now, moving into more projects of how to do things properly, because we watched it succeed in these ways.
Yeah, I'm really big on finding silver linings throughout any project that you do, anything that you do in life, because not everything has a monetary gain, but everything has some sort of ideological or personal gain as far as like your beliefs and mindset. And so you were able to create these different traditional relationships, which, like you said, is pretty funny because I'm always like anti-media as well, you know, and
Yeah.
like this is like almost a product of anti-media, this podcast and podcasting itself. And
Oh, absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
it's funny that at the end of the day, the audience base of a traditional media company still farly exceeds what social media can do at this moment.
It's just I think that the thing about social media is you're just constantly bombarded with more and more and more, where it's like you don't even notice it anymore. Before, the ad bar would be like ad across the top and it looks so different than everything else. And now you'll be scrolling through Instagram and realize that like 3 of your last 10 were ads. And it just says like in tiny print, like like next to it. It's like, okay, you just get used to seeing so many ads that it lacks like a story behind it. And the nice thing about traditional media was we were able to create a narrative behind the product. So a lot of them want to like report on like us personally and like why we created it, because it has a better story than just like go find toilet paper, and that's what like an ad would do. um but it definitely, and it was time sensitive, like we recognized that like there was really maybe like one other company doing anything similar, and all it's doing is scraping the internet for different times that like toilet paper would find up on, it would end up on like Walmart's website or any of those big box retailers. And other than that, like there wasn't anything at a localized level. And we've considered pivoting like TP Finder's like framework into different industries, but as of right now, there's nothing locked in on it. There's too many other projects we're working on, and a nice level of steady client stuff that needs to be done. So
Yeah, at the end of the day, you got to keep the lights on, right?
yeah, exactly. And but we do there's something like weirdly rewarding about working on projects that have zero intention of ever making money. It's just like for the community, and especially like for being from Vegas, both of us, like anything that supports Las Vegas, I automatically am like, yeah, I want to be behind, just because we're kind of seen as like we have an image issue, in my opinion. Like we are seen as the Strip, and which isn't a bad thing, but when you're from here, I mean, I've been to the Strip, I mean, not including COVID, but like even before that, like, I'll go there 3-4 times a year. Um, it's not really what Las Vegas is built around, but the people, like, we need to create kind of industry here and like culture here that's seen off the Strip. So anything that I have a real interest in continuing to do, these like free projects that basically help uplift the community. We're doing another one we're launching probably middle of the summer, that's called Off Strip, and it's basically highlighting 20, I think it's 28 local businesses that we feel drive cultural experience in Las Vegas, that represent a different side of Vegas than you would actually expect to see.
Interesting. I depending on what the specifications are for those kind of companies, I could probably give you some referrals to of people on this show that have been trying to build culture. Some of my last two was for like the music culture in downtown. I think that's like the emerging culture, quote unquote, culture spot in Vegas that's kind of gotten the dominant area for the locals.
Yeah, I agree. I think out of the 28, there's probably 12 downtown. So like a good chunk of them are in downtown, just because right now you get a mix of everything. When you end up sitting in some of the neighborhoods around Vegas, they're so quiet. It's kind of like it's like a sleepy area, where downtown you end up everyone has to go there so they're going there to experience something. Where like if I'm in a local, I'm at a grocery store and I walk out, there's a new store that opened next door. I'm like, well, I'm just here to buy groceries. Like I'm not as I didn't come all the way down here to do something. Where I think downtown has that movement, and I agree that music. I mean, Life is Beautiful has created like a little bit of an art pop as well, just with having all the murals on the wall. But I would like to see more of like an actual localized artist pop. Um, there's been some some different experiments that people have done, but nothing that, in my opinion, has totally stuck yet, to my knowledge at least. And yeah, music is great. I'd like to see more boutiques. I mean, like you go to other cities and you see these like curated, culturally like driven, like specific boutiques that are just like awesome to look through, and you find like even layouts of how they actually present their products in the store is interesting. We kind of lack on that right now as a city, and and it's because we have like every single store on the strip. I get it, like that, like I understand that almost every store. There's a couple I wish over here, but I get that that's why it's hard to create that sort of experience, but so does LA. So why do they, have all of these small boutiques that are like very specifically driven? I think it's also difficult because we don't have like our kind of niche yet. It's a city, but I would like to move in that direction.
Yeah, that's something that I harp on all the time over here is the different emerging industries. Obviously, sports is like one of the big components to major cities in America that help build culture. But something too I was thinking of while you were speaking is even off the strip, you have all of the local hotels and casinos, and that's kind of the local culture kind of competes with that, right? Because that's where all the big pool spots are, the kind of hangout spots. And so a lot of these these boutiques don't end up being built because the local casino in their area has everything that they need. So it makes it a little bit tougher.
Yeah, it's definitely a big business kind of city. Like it seems like everything is built around like hubs, and that's totally fine. But I think it ends up being, it feels finessed. It feels like when you walk into a casino, what, like they're to the business. Like
Mm-hmm.
everything is designed for you to spend money in them. And it's the same thing with every other part of like the big business of Vegas. And it's cool. It definitely creates like experiences that are otherworldly, compared to most places, in the US or in worldwide. But it definitely feels, once you see it a million times, it feels finesse, especially when you end up seeing something that's purely driven off, I just want to create something cool. There's some level of just relaxed energy around that lends to it's a totally unique and different experience from that very structured, I know that this is here for a reason. Like it's kind of like almost like a wabi sabi like principle of like imperfections in nature that are like beautiful. And there's like some Japanese reference on that, but it's like that sort of experience of like having like handmade things. That's how I feel about like boutiques. Like they're not supposed to be perfect, and here in Vegas, like everything is like, it's always like
Yeah,
in yeah.
you
So
I was gonna say you can build you can feel that the purpose is built with money. That's with most products. I always preach that if you build a good product or if you build a good business, the money will flow, and it'll flow because the people who use your product or show up in your business can feel the culture that you built within it. But you're
yeah.
pretty much preaching that you can feel that the purpose is money, right, when you walk in.
Yeah, well, to like, it seems like you have to see it a million times though before you realize what's happening. Like, so it's like being around it. We have like this, I guess, advantage or disadvantage, however you look at it, of seeing, because you don't really get the like the oohs and the ahs of the whole experience. But as soon as like you've seen it a million times, you're like, oh, this is cool. They're probably doing this because of this. And it's like, yep, that's exactly why it's happening. Because like it takes, but it's that's something that like you walk into specific hotels or like places, and you're like, this feels like it's not a chain, but then you look it up and you're like, or like you, let's say like you're like, it feels like it's not a chain, but there's some things here that also feel like are a little bit too structured for like what you would assume a small business would be. And you look it up and there's like 8 other ones and they're expanding in Vegas. And that's like, so it's always like that same kind of process where I'd like something to like start here and just kind of spread from. We haven't had a lot of success like that. I guess like one would be Feature, the sneaker boutique. I'm harping on boutiques and it has nothing to do with specifically shopping. It's more just it's just like an easy like I guess thing to reference. But like they've expanded now into like Calabasas, which I thought was so interesting that you would have something that is from Las Vegas expand outward into an LA market when they have so many more that have done the opposite, you know, like literally every chain. So it's kind of, I want to help and be involved with that as time goes on at just a fundamental, like, I love my city kind of energy. And also I can't help myself. I just want to be involved with like everything that involves anything design or just like super, it's a sickness. It's really like it's so like, I'll like see something and I'll take, like, if you look through my camera, like you would, or like on my phone, and just like sit there, you'd be amazed with the amount of random shit that I have photos of. Like, it is ungodly. Like, there's so many, and like, and you'll look through it, and I'll put those into like my notes and write things about them. And it looks very serial killer-y. Like, it's like, why do you have pictures of like this little thing? It's, like, people think I'm taking it. Like, I've done it, like this coffee cup, for example. It took me like legitimately 3 hours to decide that this is going to be the one that I go with, and now this is my work coffee cup. And it was purely based that I had like 15 lined up. But I'm like that with everything, with literally everything. I cannot help myself. I want to like just see it all, like touch it all, and then be like, okay, this is what I think now. And it's the same way with business. It's like it's probably not healthy because I end up not sleeping very much, but
yeah, that's something that I do respect. I mean, it's the designer in you. So you see the little nuances to all the different artistic pieces that make you feel a certain way or exert some sort of emotion. And so
exactly, no, it's exactly that. Like, if there's something so rewarding, and I don't know what it is internally, but there's something so, like, I'll walk into, like, I've bought like end tables, and I've talked about these end tables like to my girlfriend relentlessly. She probably hates them at this point, but for like a year I was like, I will buy these when I can afford them. I will buy these when I can afford them. And now I have them, and they're sitting in my room, and every time I walk in, I smile. I'm like, this is like, I was like, these are beautiful. These are so well, like, just so, that's a Dieter Rams design. It's like, he's only really made like physically for like end tables. I think those are the only ones. So I'm like, he was like the creative director of Braun, which, if you look back at Braun, like in the 50s, 60s, they like influenced all of Johnny Ive's designs at Apple. So like the iMac is based on a Braun speaker from like the 50s. So like the idea of me having a piece of that history and getting able to like touch it, feel it, see it daily, geeks, like I'm like I like it, I can't help but smile. Like, it's just like, it's something that like I aspire to be a part of and like have my name referenced in there. And it's so, right now it's technology, and like I do love technology. I love the space, but I also love end tables. So there's no it's just yeah, we'll see where it trickles. But for Deep Space program, I think that's going to stay specifically around technology. I don't think we'll pivot out of that ever.
I really hope now that whenever I come into the office, there better be some fucking killer end tables in there.
Oh no, one set of those. That's my budget of the year for those. I'm not but the office does have some very nice plants. It has my Heath ceramics cups. You guys should look that up. Awesome. Look up the history of it. It's all this is basically just mid-century, and like anything that's like, when you created an idea in the 40s, 50s, 60s that still holds true to today. I love that shit. I love it so much that like it ends up, it's so like am I allowed to curse, by the way, at all?
Of course, dude, speak your mind.
Okay, so like I've been trying to keep it pretty even, but like
freedom of creativity through words.
So thank you. I guess like the biggest thing about all of it is just like it's interesting to me when like things exist 50 years later and are still as relevant as they were then, and that's the only, that may be the only issue I have with technology. Every other part of it, I am obsessed with. It's like the idea of taking something and that's like so big, so vast. Like, let me take a million lines of this and give it to you in half a second. It's like the thing, like this doesn't, like it's impossible. I'm like the slowest reader in the world, so it also is like super appealing to me, because it's like you can take all of this and make it happen. Imagine if I had to read through all those, highlight them, do something like that, like how we would have 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's that sped up process is super intriguing, and plus the idea of how people interact with something that's flat and making it feel like it has life to it, that also is like super appealing to me. But that is the only qualm I have with it. It's like in 50 years,
Yeah.
we will probably have narrow net, shout out to Elon again, and nobody will even use anything visual anymore.
Yeah. Well, something that always stands the length of time that I really enjoy is books and literature. Reading old books that are still relevant, whether it's, even Warren Buffett's mentor about finance, or I was reading an Aldous Huxley book called The Island it's written in the 60s, that refers to like Russia and the USA being like the secret evil people of the world, and how it's like still somewhat relevant, and different literature books like that are like still hold true to today.
Yeah, no, completely. I think I think a lot of the greatest literature in history is something that no matter when the story is told, it still holds true. Like that's sort of it's kind of why I hate reading. I used to love reading marketing books. And then I was reading one, I think it was, oh man, I'm not going to be able to remember. I was reading one, and it referenced something that was like based on Apple, but it was like too outdated to exist. And I was like, this is such a moment in time sort of book. I was like, I don't really care about this as much as I care about the principle of why it exists. So it's like, oh yeah, you should not, let's say I'm going to use something that's probably not referenced out, but it's like on mobile, you should have at least 10 points of margin from your left like wall of the phone. It's like, yeah, that may be relevant now, but let's say you have something where like Samsung, right, where it actually goes over the edges. It's like you're gonna need more than 10. So now that somebody's referencing that as a principle of your design, but it's not really applicable. Like it has no real meaning 5 years from now or a year from now. So instead, why wouldn't you say like, oh yeah, like you're supposed to create some sort of like some ratio of the actual view width? Then it's like, okay, now that holds true, and give it like between like 1 point or like 5% and 8% of the view width in total. So like creating rules like that are a lot more interesting to me than like specific ones. And a lot of the things I were reading that were like, yeah, moments in time that like will only exist there for that sort of marketing, or only exist there in that sort of, like, those aren't really like that's not the meaningful thing. It's like creating the bigger picture around it. Like old literature, like you were saying, that's like I was reading, I think it's called The Richest Man in Babylon. It's like 120 pages, really small, or like a quick read. And one of the things was basically, it was like a principle of like hold 10% of your money. And like, I'm probably going to slaughter like the recap of it, but so if anyone wants to read it, you should, it's a solid book. But at the end of it, it basically said that these were all written on, I guess, some sort of, basically this is business advice from 1,000+ years ago. And it's still held true exactly to today. It's exactly what somebody who's like a financial advisor would be like, yeah, you should be holding this amount of money every time. You should be doing this with it, paying off your debts, all these different like little things. And I'm like, how is that possible that like currency has not, it's not like changing. The idea, the principle behind it isn't like really changing in that way. Like how you interact with your payments and how you spend money and how you save money and how you invest your money has been the same for 1,000+ years, and it's written about it. So like you obviously should, those sort of things that blew my mind. The whole book was basically like, here's this story about these people. And I was like, oh, it's a cool business book. And at the end, it referenced that it was like written that long ago. And I was like, it's from, I think 1928 was the year it was published. But I want to say it was on like scrolls before that they found like some weird, like I said, look up the story. I'm probably like, but it's a pretty, yeah, books are huge. I wish I read more than I do. I bought a Kindle thinking I was going to be reading like crazy. And yeah, for like 3 books on it. Not exactly my greatest investment.
Yeah, that's something that I've gotten away from since I started the podcast is reading, which I'm really sad about. But once you pursue something that you feel passionate about, then it takes a backseat for a little bit, and you're learning throughout your way. But there's something also that I'm curious about. So all these different ideas, philosophies that we talked about. We talked about building things that stand through time, the different designs and different ideas behind that. Do you have those ideas? Have you built those ideas into the projects that you work with through Deep Space Program and your affiliates?
Yeah, no, completely. So I think a lot of like what's referenced in physically in the design, it's always going to be like I have a very much a minimal aesthetic on how I like to approach things. I don't put things places that aren't needed, and I try to stay as clean and direct as possible in messaging and branding and UI design and everything. And the technology I feel like should be the same way. So not feature creeping your way into a massive bill with very little change in the software. But yeah, we've tried to use or I've tried to use, I guess, all the principles I've kind of come up with over the years into each and every project, and creating, like, I believe wholeheartedly in capitalism, right? So like I have like this principle of like, if you create more companies, only the cream of the crop will rise. Like there is no, so like creating 1,000 companies and 2 of them succeed, those are the best 2 to succeed. They should succeed. If you only have like a couple to begin with, there's who's to say that you don't have the actual the competition to create the best out of it. And so we created a company called Leaf Sheets, which is basically a cannabis document builder. So I guess you could say it's like a legal Zoom for cannabis. So in the past, creating or to like apply for a license to run a grow or to actually get a dispensary or any of those sort of licensing, you would have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on licensing. You have to go to a lawyer or to a consultant, then they package it, put it together for you. And so what we did by partnering with a consultant was actually take all of those, using our background in software, kind of take them all, make them very much standardized, across the board, and then slowly introduce it to the point where you can just go onto Leaf Sheets and type in all your business information, and for a fraction of that price, we'll be able to create all of the documentation you need to apply to get your cannabis license in your state. So what this is doing basically is creating endless amounts of competition, because now you're taking the control from people that can afford to put in 150,000 plus or 100,000 plus, and bringing it down to a tens of thousands of dollars. So you can go get a loan for that, or let's say you've saved that much, and now you actually have a chance, just as much as the big guys, of getting that application fulfilled. And if you do, you now have a very sustainable business that's in a industry that's growing. So the idea of these principles of basically creating something that's accessible and something that is able to create more competition, meaning better product in the end, that's always what we wanted. So Leaf Sheets is a perfect example of how we were able to take that, put it into a business, and actually I think we'll say loosely, it should be ready on July 1st. So I've said that 2 or 3 times, privately to people, and they're like, "Hey, when's it gonna be?" And I'm like, yeah, about that. So hiccups. So it's a fickle process.
Yeah,
it is launching a product.
Something I've learned in tech, and it happens all the time throughout the tech field, is that the products, it's, what is it, over promise, under deliver, something like that people say, where it's just like not necessarily the product is diluted, but that the date isn't an actual date. It's kind of a moving one, but you can't present it that way.
Yeah, one of my close friends and actually partners on another business that we're under Deep Space running as well, that I can touch on, I guess. But he has a 90-10 rule. And I always thought it was interesting that he was like, yeah, 90% of it's done in half the time, and the other 10% is done the second half of the time. So no matter what, in technology, you're always behind. It never seems to fail. And he would say something, I mean, we'd be 3 months ahead, and he's like 90-10. I'm telling you. And I'm like, you're jinxing us. Don't say this. Like 6 months go by. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, you're totally right. It's the finishing touches, making sure everything's commercially ready, getting the marketing together, making sure everything is cohesive across like the whole project. It's like that sort of stuff is super underrated. Like it all takes so long and so much effort that like you end up thinking, you're like, oh yeah, we have a working prototype. How much longer until we go live with this? And you're like, forever. That's how long. Literally forever.
And when you bring in like these external partners and you help build a product, do you provide maintenance services with that as well?
Yeah, typically. So it depends on the partnership. So basically on that one that I just touched on with it, my friend is a 90-10 rule. He kind of, we'd work together. He has another company that he's worked on for a number of years that is successful in the tech industry. And he was like, hey, I have this idea. I want you to design it and build it with me. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. But he has a technical background, so the maintenance issue isn't really that isn't something that we have to maintain internally. It was more of a marketing designing aspect on that project in particular. But for leaf sheets, because we've partnered with somebody where we have more of the technical background. So yeah, we end up having to have that all internally. We don't partner. I guess we do partner with people regularly, but it's not as frequent as I guess it makes it seem. It's like, so leaf sheet's been in the works for like a year and a half, and then same thing with scoopers, which is we'll say an Uber model but for pooper scoopers. And so it's
Genius.
it's honestly, I have kind of a complex about it because we basically launched scoopers and TP Finder within a month of each other. And so I was like, I can't do 2 media runs in a row where basically both of them are shit related. I cannot do that. Like I can't go from toilet paper to dog poop all within like a 1 week period. I was like, it's like suicide for my actual, like my image. And yeah, it still happens. So we'll see how that plays out. Hopefully some of these other products, weigh in on that. But yeah, so it's basically on the Pooper Scooper app was just, I think it was $100 million market cap every year, which that blew my mind. But apparently there's a ton of these services out there. And all of the services, basically they have to have an accountant and they have to have a scheduling platform and they have to have all the different like tools of the trade to be able to because it's not just like picking it up, it's also deodorizing your backyard. And then they have to market their product. And so a lot of them basically were like, yeah, like the money is good, but there's so many aspects that we don't control. And I was like, what kind of sounds, and this is where Jameson kind of stepped in. He was like, yeah, that is a technology company. We're connecting somebody with a service and a consumer, or somebody who's providing a service and a consumer, and we're marketing for both of them. So we're marketing to both sides. And I was like, okay, this is an interesting concept because now we can handle the accounting all internally. We can handle all the marketing for the people internally. And it's not a national brand at that point. So now you have your city that unlock, and basically you're part of a brand. And then also the scheduling is something that's easily done throughout the software. So basically anyone can go to in the App Store right now or the Play Store and download Scoopers. It launched last month. No matter what I said about the COVID launch, we ended up doing it anyways, which was it was ready to go. And we were just like, we'll put it out there and see what happens, and started getting some traction. So we were like, we'll leave it there then. So it's been cool.
It sounds like through this conversation that you guys have grown into almost like a full service agency or like kind of a variation of it. That's not just like app builders or designers, that you've had to pick up different, I wouldn't say industries, but different sectors within a business as far as like accounting, marketing, just partnerships and other things.
So we used to call ourselves like a design agency. Now we pivoted and now say like a design and product studio, because for a lot of our clients, we also create turnkey businesses. So basically they say, I have, this idea and I have this budget and I don't have anything done yet. And they're like, so I'm like, okay, well, you need to create an entire brand, a brand identity, a marketing campaign, like, and an app. And there isn't a lot of places that I can think of in Las Vegas. There's massive design studios that do things like this. But even they piece most of it out. They don't have engineers like on staff or like closed circuits. So it's been an interesting run to realize that we do kind of fit into a weird niche area of this whole space, this whole like launching of products. But yeah, it's we are definitely full service. I don't know. I kind of, when I'd walk into meetings and people would ask, like, oh, can you guys do this? Can you guys do this? Can you guys do this? And I would like just stop and be like, anything that you can think of, we can get done in one way or another. Like literally, and is that like a healthy approach? Probably not. But it is the real thing is like, if you like, we had to do for one of the companies that I designed, basically did all the creative direction from the time that they were funded on. And so we did like all their UI, branding, portals, mobile apps, all their pitch decks, press decks, all that kind of stuff. And so they were like, hey, we're going to start doing trade shows. And then we had to do huge banners across the back. And then they were like, where was I going with that? Jeez.
Being the full product studio.
Oh yeah, but there was something that I was like was super like weird and out of nowhere, and I ended up designing. But it's I don't know. Just trust that we do a lot of stuff.
I was gonna say, if you gave me $1 for every time somebody came up to me and was like, "Bro, I'm gonna be rich," and I'm like, "Why?" and they're like, "I have the perfect app idea," but then nobody ever ends up going through with the idea because they don't know how to implement the idea, how to build it, how to market it. And so it's a perfect product placement, especially here in Vegas where people are making, you can make upwards of a few $1,000s in a night if you're in the right spot. And so there's a lot of big ideas that circle around the strip and the industry itself, but they never get put to work because they don't know where to go and how to do it.
It's definitely, it's interesting. We kind of have a theory that like, we obviously just before meeting with anyone, we sign NDAs and everything. But I tell people, I'm like, ideas are kind of a dime a dozen. It's executing on the idea. Whatever your idea is, no matter how great it is, it can be the best idea ever. There's 10,000 other people that probably had the same thought. It's actually taking that idea and being able to execute and push forward. And it takes a ton of nurturing and a ton of time. And most people, I don't know if they aren't willing to put it in, or they just don't realize that it actually, like, however much you think is too much, is not enough still. It's never enough. You always have to keep pushing past like what your comfort level is, especially in technology when there's literally millions of people using like everything every minute. It's like, yeah, there's going to be 1,000 other companies that are doing something very similar to what you're doing, whether you know it or not. And like, you can find them. There's somebody else working on this in the Ukraine. Somebody else is working on a product similar to this. Somebody else is working on a product similar to this in China. Someone's doing it in Germany. Someone's doing. So it's like, you have to like rise to the top, which means like the amount of hours you put in, the amount of time you put into these projects is kind of just, it's endless. Like, it's just, your only goal is just creating the best possible thing. And that's my take on it. Some people think that that's, like I said, unhealthy and not like worth going into, but then my advice is don't get into technology. There's plenty of other businesses that don't need to scale like that.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. Especially technology and apps is probably one of the most hyper competitive fields out there right now, since it's been around for probably 10 years now.
10 years, yeah.
Yeah, and people still find different ways to maneuver. Like, I thought social media had a monopoly basically with Instagram, WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, but now TikTok emerged, and it's like, I never thought that happened. I thought social media was kind of just the giants were there and that was it. But people work hard enough and they can get there.
My favorite thing about TikTok is like, it is almost no different than Vine, besides the music component and like the algorithm being tremendously better. Like, I swear to God, I test it. I download TikTok, watch videos that I normally would like not care about. Like there's some specific things that like I have TikTok on my phone. Do I use it often? No, but I don't really use Instagram or Facebook that often either. It's just kind of one of those, I try so hard to stay off, because you'll lose hours. But I downloaded TikTok because everyone kept talking about like, oh yeah, provide like it's so addicting. It's so addicting. Like it's so much fun. And I was like, there has to be something there. So I watched like 5 videos in a row that I did not care about. And sure, but they were like around a specific topic. It was like specific dance sort of videos. And so I did that, turned it off, right? A couple of days later, came back, went, the next like 10 in line were basically all the same sort of videos. And I was like, because I watched them all the way through, it knows that now that's like, well, now my profile is kind of corrupted. So that kind of backfired. But the idea of it was just, I was like, TikTok clearly like succeeds in this way. But yeah, I didn't think that if you repackaged Vine, that all of a sudden it was going to be the next major social media. And it is really entertaining. Like every once in a while, I'll check it out and see what's on there. People are doing creative stuff, which I dig. Like there's a lot of, anytime you can like, be locked in your house for 2 months and create, a business out of it, like becoming basically TikTok famous overnight seems like a cool run.
Yeah, as we've discussed, it seems like technology, there's a little bit of a right place, right time, and luck to it. Kind of how TP Finder was. It was kind of the right idea, and that idea was sparked in the middle of a pandemic, which you probably wouldn't have thought of, or the product would never even fit beforehand.
Oh yeah, no, there was in no way, it's kind of an interesting, I guess, story of how we had no interest in creating anything like that in the past. Nothing that's like a map or we have a map for off strip, but that was more of a, like I said, like a local interest. And we kind of vouched for ourselves. We're like, okay, we're done making products that are just going to be like, take a lot of time and be freebies because we have to eat, right? Like that's at the end of the day. And so then the idea was thrown around and I was like, I think it could help people. Like it's seriously, I think there is a need, like everyone's posting online. If you look through like Facebook groups, there's tons of people just posting about toilet paper. I was like, this isn't that big of a deal. Like we could definitely find a way for people to not have to go to 10 different stores. And so like throughout it was just perfect timing mixed with like I actually think it wasn't. I think it was 1 week late. If it was done 1 week earlier and we didn't push our kind of narrative of like, no, we're not gonna like get involved with that if we started a week earlier and we're able to launch a week earlier, I think that 250 would be 1 million. Like I think that like thousands would end up becoming millions because we like just missed it by like a tiny bit, but it's still, nevertheless, it's not really about the numbers as much as about just the aspect of it. It existed to help and it did that task. But yeah, it was perfect timing. And honestly, like trying to cold call a news station and get somebody to respond to you is super difficult. When you call and you ask the question, hey, can you find toilet paper in your neighborhood? And they're like, no, I've been looking for it everywhere. And then I'm like, oh wait, I have an app for you. And the amount of the lack of shame I had while promoting that is honestly amazing. It's so out of character for me because I'm pretty like, I'm not a reserved human, but I normally, like, this is the first time I think I've talked about any sort of work publicly. I'll talk about something like besides some media stuff for TV Finder, but like I don't really talk about my takes on things like that because I just don't find it to be, for me, interesting because I think about it all the time. So like so actually having to like call and put myself out there in like a weird way because like I'm a designer, like I identify as a designer. I'm definitely not a salesman by any means, which is incredible that we've been able to grow any amount of business with my level of sales. It's definitely, it was interesting. But yeah, leading with, can you find toilet paper? And nobody could. So I was like, I know the answer already. Now I'm just trying to reel you in. I'm baiting you in so I can just take it. But yeah, definitely right place, right time, right push, right people around you to be able to build it quickly. That was also a key. Like nobody else, unless you work at a tech company, which you probably have agreements that you can't do a lot of that, or you work in another studio, there's really not a lot of people that are able to create something in that short amount of time that's going to like look good, feel good, and be able to be a consumer product. So that was an advantage to DSP for sure.
Interesting. Earlier, you mentioned that you don't really use social media that much personally. I'm actually really surprised by that because Instagram is really built off of design, and I see a lot of designers flock to that. So I'm curious why you don't use it, and isn't it important to your business to kind of put yourself out there, or do you have other members do that?
So, okay, I should use Instagram more. I should. My thing is like I'll go on and I'll scroll and I'll if you go through like my explore page, it's all design centric, like everything. Because what I'm liking is constantly like I'll interact with friends and like some memes and things like that. But like I do that in text messages too. So like the DM portion of it is like kind of an afterthought in my mind of like what the actual like software is, or like the actual premise of the app. And it is design centric, but it's also a lot of like, BS centric. Like there's a lot of things on there that's just filler. It's like how many Insta models are gonna like come up like like if you look through most people's feeds, it's like that's not really, like it's like it's not like I wouldn't say it's like a design feed by any means. It may have started around photos, but it started on photos like people taking pictures of their food and stuff. That doesn't interest me that much. So like it ends up being I think my first year on Instagram was maybe 2012, maybe 13, somewhere in that range. And I had a men's fashion blog on there. And I kick myself all the time for not continuing that, because it would have, at that time it was like my first thought was exactly yours. It's like, there's blogs out there, but like, why would I have a blog if I could just have everything right here accessible, where anyone who's on Instagram also gets to see this? And now you've seen a ton of blogs. Well, obviously every blog in the world has all their stuff on Instagram as well, pushing to go read. But in my mind, I was like, I don't need to write 500 word articles on this. I just need to like a release date on something, or like a little background on the designer, stuff like that. It was all I was doing, and it fit into the description. So I was doing that for a while and I really enjoyed it. But over time, it just kind of started to seem like it was a distraction from the actual design work that I want to be taking part in every day. And I realized that I was just, every time in between thoughts, I'd be like opening Instagram again. I'm like, why am I? It's like compulsive.
So true.
So I definitely, but yeah, if you look at like Deep Space Programs everyone who's listening should go follow that, and maybe I'll actually start posting regularly. It's but yeah, if you go look at it, it's been like several weeks probably. I don't even think we referenced TP Finder in there, and that's because I was doing media pushes in more traditional ways. Our 500 followers on Instagram aren't really going to be, unless a lot of it was based around design in general as well. So it's yes, I do have, and I feel like you look through. Here, I'll open just to, I guess, to humor you on this.
Bust it out.
If you go through my actual like folders on here that you saved, there's literally, so there's all post, branding, art, architecture, physical design, and then random design.
He just got 6 of them on there.
Those are my only 6. Those are my only 6 of my saved folders. So that should explain if I use it for design or not right there. There's no like, and all of them, and there's some gold in there, but there's also, I'll look on more design centric websites like Behance or Dribble for inspiration on projects. So it's social media is key for marketing in a lot of ways, and we've used it for that in a lot of different projects. But for me, being on there daily I've tried to take a back seat, which it could be a bad idea, it may be a good idea, I don't know, but I do know that it makes me not wake up and grab my phone right away to check Instagram of basically, and there's nothing on there that's that interesting. So, like I'd much rather get into a pattern of like grabbing it and opening the news app. I'm still not at that point in my life. Right now I'm grabbing it and opening Robinhood. Today was a massacre, but
the top is in, my friend.
Oh God. Yeah. So I guess maybe I'm just taking one compulsive action of Instagram and moving it into Robinhood, which is no better. So maybe I should take it again.
It sounds like you're doing it for honorable reasons. You're doing it for a production and motivational standpoint. We all have to set our different rules and boundaries. Like for myself, I don't turn the TV on or I don't turn Netflix on until the sun is down, or at least like close to it, because once I start watching TV, I'm pretty much deactivated for the rest of the day. So we all have to set
Yeah.
these small parameters. And I mean, honestly, if you're better at production and creating and designing without Instagram, then I would rather have that than 1,000 followers where there's no output.
It's definitely, it's not a level of better. It's a level of my favorite thing in the world, it's been this for 10, probably 20 years, but most of my life has been sitting there listening to music. It has to like a good soundtrack. Right now I'm just on old Kanye, but it has to be like a good soundtrack of just like letting me open a sketchbook and just go. Like whatever it is. So if I'm designing someone's logo, I'll do 15 different versions of basic ideas. And like that'll be, 2 hours where that is like my meditation almost. Like I'm usually like bob my head, drinking way too much coffee and just vibing. And that's kind of like where like my sweet spot is of design. But once I'm like, I'll sit there on Instagram or Dribble or Behance or any of these, like Pinterest sometimes, or just going through Google Images and like referencing like symbolism and referencing all these different things. And I'll put all those up on my screen, look at them for a little bit, get some influence, and then go, okay, now let's create something good. So, and it's the same with like physical project. Like I'll take a picture of something on my phone and then, put it in my notes, write something on it. And then, a month later, I'll still be thinking about like, there was this brutalist chair that was like, I called it a brutalist chair. It could be like the most minimal thing ever, but it's basically just like a C shape and then a like back kind of half of a U, I guess you could consider it. And then another C shape that went to the ground. And that was the entire chair. And I was like, and I kept thinking about it repeatedly over and over and over. And my only thought was like, can I take more away from it? Like, can it be less, even like, can it be less than that? And I did. And like, I don't know how functional it'd be. I guess I'd have to build it to figure it out. But like the idea of just like, I couldn't escape that thought. So I had to go into like one of those states of like headphones in and just keep going. And it's definitely everything. Like references matter, and Instagram matters, and marketing matters, and brand identity to yourself and your personal brand matter. But like if you don't have what it takes to back it up with like skill, then what's all of it matters not. Right now I consider, I guess, like honing my craft. Like I'm just trying to be better at everything. But I really should show. I was actually going to put an Instagram poll on my personal Instagram, not the business one, and say like, ask if people even care about like seeing what I do day to day, like design wise. Do they care? Or are they just there because they like Nick as the friend? Or do you care about what I do in the day to day? Because I've been considering like whether it's I should have more cooks in the kitchen, more voices telling me like, oh, I like that, or like, this one is better, or something, because everyone has their personal taste. And I've realized that was another thing it took me years to realize, was just because I think it's the best version of it doesn't mean that they do.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no right or wrong answer. There's sure design principles that are true, like tried and true, but they're not necessarily always what everyone wants. Yeah. And I had to accept that.
Especially in the creativity realm where there is no objective yes or no, and it's all just based off of a person's preferences and a person's ideals. So it's really hard to know what actually is right, because there's no correct yes or no.
Yeah, it's definitely, I will take, so there'll be certain things like I don't believe in over design branding. I think the strongest, and it's that to me is like tried and true over years. Like you look at the companies that have the most iconic branding and what they represent. It's not about how much you can put into it. It's about how much you can take out of it and still hold its value to that brand. So like a swoosh to me is like, it's iconic now, right? Like the Nike swoosh is iconic. I think they bought it for like $30 off like a design student. And it was like, this'll do for now, I guess it'll do. And that's such a testament to just like good design, where it's like that best $30 ever spent. I think they had to pay her again years later, but like regardless, the idea behind it is just like it's not about creating something that's like everything to everybody. It's about creating something that works with most people. And you gotta take ideas from everybody though.
Yeah, I think the Nike logo combined with their slogan or their motto is the best combination out there. Shoe Dog's actually my favorite book I've ever read, which is the autobiography. Yeah, of Phil Knight.
Shoe Dog is a solid read. That's Phil Knight is a man. Also, like the one thing that's interesting about when you look at Nike, Apple, right? Like all of these companies that are just, their slogans aren't like, none of it's accidental. Like it took thousands of man hours or people hours, you know, to get to the point where like they're like, just do it. There's no way that was the first thing they thought about. There's just no, and whatever company they paid, because likely it was some marketing company in New York or LA or San Francisco or London. There's somebody who's made a million slogans like that, and was probably the best couple $1 million they ever spent, right? And years later,
dude, it's worth billions or hundreds of billions.
Yeah, it's just kind of it's like if you see an ad and it has no symbols on it, but it's like this San Francisco font that is now known with Apple. I think they created it. They did create it actually, with a period at the end, where it's like, you know, it has all of their language of how they structure sentences has its own identity to it. Like how if you go into an Apple website and you cropped everything out of it, it's just black with the white text or white with black text, and it has the periods at the end of each sentence. You're like, yeah, it's an Apple ad. Like without a doubt, you know automatically. You don't have to like technology. You don't have to like product. You don't have to like Apple. You know it's Apple. Like there is those sort of things take years of finessing and years of just making perfect. And I find that to be beautiful. That's like having some level of people feel ownership in a brand like that. That's the cool thing. People they like love it. They love it to their core. Like you'll see, like I love shoes. Like I have it probably has something to do with design, but it's just shoes are like one of those things that if I'm better now, but like when I was younger, it was like, oh, I have $200 in my pocket, 180 will be spent on this pair of Nikes or this pair of Jordans or this pair of, like it was just enter here. It was just nonstop. And I get that, because when people feel when you have branding that's that good and that's that meaningful, the product is good, sure, but they feel ownership in your brand, which is sick.
Like I said, right when we started this conversation, you're the Steve Jobs of your company, and you definitely have the mindset of them. It seems like you've been able to pick at that a little bit, touch on it, which I like.
I appreciate the reference. We'll see if I live up to it. I hope I do. I'd be pretty disappointed if I didn't at least create something great out of all of this madness going in my head every day.
Hey, the Deep Space program sounds like it's on track, and I'm curious, how many projects, if you're allowed to talk, are you guys working on at the moment?
Wait, one sec. I'm gonna slide to the side and go through my notes. Projects that are internal or that are also client projects?
Let's separate them. So let's do internal first. Okay,
we're working on 4 internal projects. 4. Okay. So TP Finder we just closed out of. That's done for the time being. We have Off Strip, which is the map of Las Vegas, a physical map and online that'll be launching midsummer. We have Scoopers, which launched last month. We have Leaf Sheets, which is in the Leaf Sheets, which is supposed to be about July 1st. Actually, there's 5. And then we have another one called Clean Clocks. I'm not gonna fully touch on that yet.
That's fine.
But that one should also be a midsummer, end of summer, maybe a September, let's say, release on it. We've kind of, at the beginning of this year, we closed out of a lot of projects that we felt that had merit, but they were almost becoming dead weight. They were taking up a lot of time, and although we loved them and we spent a lot of money on them, they just were not at a level that we wanted to be in moving forward. They didn't have the business plan behind them that really deserved to have as much time as they were taking. We had one that's in particular that I was dead set on for a while, which was it was called Fake Friends. And it was going to be a marketing tool based around influencer marketing on social media, specifically Instagram, because I'd look through by these people, I mean any influencer that was between, 5K and, 5 million. And I'd look through their users, and knowing from using botting services in the past, we actually wrote one to for a company, and just seeing all of their followers and being like, these are fake. These are all fake. They bought a ton of these that are fake, and they're charging to these small, a lot of them are big business, but a lot of them are mom and pop. Like what I would consider mom and pop is you have one or two, maybe three products, and you put all of your life savings into it. And now you're playing, so-and-so who lives this great life in LA doing these ads, and you're paying her $5,000 because you think she has 65,000 users. And I was like, and half of them are fake. So on that way, we were able to create an algorithm that would actually spin out how many of them are truly real and how many are fake. Real being active users on her account, or him. And it was moving along really nicely, but we made the wrong decision of considering it a consumer product and not a B2B product. And if we would have marketed it B2B, I think it would still exist, but we spent a lot of money on getting people on it. So we had about a million verified accounts by the time we pulled the plug and said, okay, we're gonna stop working on it. And that was purely off consumers from Facebook ads, Instagram ads, all that kind of stuff. But the main premise of it was, it should have been, we were just marketing it to businesses and to marketing agencies and saying, oh, you have influencer ads, you should be running all of your people through this, because their true value isn't 65 if 40% or 50% of their user base is fake. And a lot of people will say oh, I didn't buy any fake followers, why are they on here? I mean, I was running it on mine. I have a few hundred users on my personal one, or followers on my personal one. And it said I had a 75% real ratio, meaning that 25% of mine, just because I'm not private, were bots or inactive accounts. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is inactive does not mean that they're not real people. It means they don't use Instagram regularly. So why would I be adding them into the number that should be paid for? And that was moving along really well, but yeah, we made that crucial business decision that was ended up ultimately making it where we felt like we should close shop. And that was, so that one, and we had two others that were kind of halfway done. We had a Kindle-based app that we pulled the plug on early this year, and kind of started only working on leaf sheets, scoopers, and then TP Finder wiggled its way in there. But it was that was not a planned project by any means.
It's all trial and error, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy that one small business decision could end up crippling an app or a business.
Oh yeah, no, there's something to be said about having a good business plan and an actual a target market. And when I say, a lot of people will talk to them, especially on a client side, and they'll be, yeah, my target is males 24 to 48. I'm like, that's not a character. That's not who, do you know a guy who's 24 to 48? And they're like, yeah, I know several. I'm like, no, do you know a guy who's 24 to 40? I was like, you're not creating a character if you're giving him a 24 span around who you're marketing towards. If you're going to say a proper character, so to speak, for a marketing plan, is I'm targeting a female who's 23 years old, just finished her college career, and has moved to a large city. That is a character you can build a marketing plan around. So if you're only targeting that person, now you're able to create a very niche audience and build from there. But your first, keeping these vast amounts of people is not the move. So for us, we made the crucial wrong decision of saying, how many marketing companies have influencer programs that are built into their actual project, or to the actual services list? Probably not that many. Probably less than, we'll say, 1,000 across the US. Should have been targeting them heavily. That should have been the easy move. Instead, we targeted, 2 million people on Instagram ads over the course of a couple months and spent a few $1,000s. So once again, Facebook makes more money off a tech company starting than the actual tech company. But it's, that crucial move, that taught us anything. It was stop creating projects because they're cool and start creating projects because they're cool and they make sense that they could work long term. Like you can't just have one without the other.
Yep, that comes straight through experience. And
Yeah.
and for confidentiality, you don't have to say the names, but I'm curious how many partners you have or how many other apps you're working on, if you're allowed to say.
For clients or for actual partnerships? Because like
What's the difference?
So our partners on like when I say partners, I mean like we actually are partnered on some of these apps. So these internal apps are not just like us working on things. So we'll have like Scoopers, we're a part of a 5-person team in that, right?
Okay.
Leaf Sheets, we're part of a 3-person team. So or a 2-company 3-person team.
Okay, I get it now. Yeah.
So we're actually like documented partners. We assigned a marriage certificate together basically. So that's it's the clients that we are working with probably at any given time of the year between 5 and 15 monthly. Some of it can be pretty small, some of it can be fairly large. On the months where it's 15, there's a lot of, or maybe 15 is a little bit, maybe 5 to 10. Getting above that, it gets a little out of hand. It's just some of these projects, especially the technology-based ones, a lot of the branding it's a quicker turnaround. It's like a 4 to 6 week turnaround versus some of the apps we have a 6 to 12 month turnaround depending on the level of how detailed they are. And so probably like 5 to 10 partners at a time. Right now, because of COVID, we are kind of towards the bottom of that. We're at probably like I think 6 active that we're working on projects, mostly because the first month of when we were sitting in the house, I was so bored that literally all I was doing is just working. So like we were able to like pump through like I think I finished the 2 websites in the first 3 days of I worked like 15-hour days. Like each time it just was like boom, 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 and kind of was able to knock it out. But that's this year's been particularly weird circumstances on a lot of things. So I think. But I guess to recap, 5 internal and just 5 to 10 client probably at any given time. And the internal ones those projects are kind of like our baby. So they take up 50% of the time, and the client takes up 50% of the time. And that's kind of how we split it from the beginning. Because in order to truly fund a lot of our projects, we have to be making money in some way. And that's where that side of the business came in.
And like I said, got to keep the lights on. And I know you're very busy, so I think this is a good segment towards the outro of this episode. And before we go, I always ask 2 questions, same questions to everybody. And so the first question is, the year is 2030. What does the status of the deep space program look like?
Oh, we're definitely we're bi-coastal. We're in a couple at least a couple cities, if not a couple countries. I think that's the end goal, is to keep expanding and to keep building. And I'd like all the subsidiaries of Deep Space Program to be in the ideas that I guess we're creating. I don't want to be lost. They hold their own weight. So I hope that they're succeeding in the same way that DSP has. But definitely I would say in Las Vegas, we would have, I think, a pretty large footprint of a studio that is handling both maybe physical, but definitely technology. And I think that's kind of where I see it. I see it growing and expanding and becoming kind of its own hybrid of all these different studios. You have a lot of design studios, you have a lot of tech studios. I'd like to continue it growing in a space where we don't have to put on one cap or the other, but we can have the two and use them to their advantages.
We're going to be a full-on galaxy. And
Oh
and
yes.
the last question we touched on a little bit earlier, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it anyway, is what does Las Vegas mean to you?
This is home. This is I've tried other cities. I've done it. I've done my stints, and I definitely I appreciate every city for what it is. But Vegas, when you fly in, you see the strip to your left, and you kind of see the mountain range. You're like, this is like I get a sense of just like calmness. This is home. This is where I want to expand my life. This is where I see like creating my footprint and really growing and hoping that I can help in some way grow Las Vegas as well. I definitely, the city has given me some of my best friendships, my most meaningful moments, and I like to contribute in a constructive way back.
Yes. Likewise, my friend, likewise. Where can everyone get connected with you, Deep Space Program, or anything else notable?
So on social media, I'll put up that poll and you can actually see if you want to see my design work or not. On social media, personally, it's at Nick Bembenek, NickBembenek. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the same handle. And for Deep Space Program, it's at Deep Space Program, spelled exactly how it should. I think on Twitter, we're at Deep Space Prog, not program, because they only give you 15 characters.
And it's a website too, correct?
Yeah, deepspaceprogram.com. We're actually updating with all of our new portfolios. Probably in 2 weeks, we'll have basically every project that we've worked on in the last 3 years on there, and then all of the projects that we're building out with more descriptions and kind of stories of how they came to be. So that'll all be happening in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to check that out at deepspaceprogram.com, that'd be great. And if DM me if you have any questions, or email me, email the studio, anything, and I'm usually pretty good about responding.
Solid. Yeah, I'll send them your way too. I know down the road I'll come across those people all the time with ideas, so I'll definitely be able to refer that. And I thank you for this conversation. I learned a lot. I'm gonna call you Nick Jobs now from now on, until we get to where we need to be.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me. It means a lot, and I'm happy I got to actually speak on all of this for kind of the first time publicly.
Dude, I'm glad it could be your first, and I'm sure this conversation will happen down the road at some point again. So I thank you. I thank everyone for listening, and I'll catch you next time.